How's it going, Gumi King? Welcome back to another Black Ops 6 video. Now, I want to talk again about shotguns, big surprise there, but more specifically, why they kind of feel clunky. I've seen numerous people tell me, and I felt it myself, that something in this game, something about using like the pump, just feels off, and I can't put my finger on what it is. So with this video, I'm actually aiming to try to find out what that is, and I've landed on a few different controller options and just sort of ideas in general as to why it might feel clunky for you, and things that you can do to kind of improve it. It's mostly going to be talking about specific options for your controller, so it's just my way of saying, hey, I feel it as well as you guys do, and this is my way to try to combat it, and it has helped me personally. I've noticed a big difference in how it feels, so hopefully these options that I share with you guys will help you out. If you still feel it after this, just let me know, because there could be something else that maybe I'm missing. Just let me know if it still feels kind of clunky, but I want to share why it might be clunky and ways to fix it. And as always, timestamps will be below in the description if you want to hop to a certain part of the video where I talk about maybe a specific controller setting or something like that. So before I get into the actual controller settings, one of the big reasons why it might feel clunky, and this is sort of a prologue to the settings that you might want to change, is just the nature of the shotguns and the fact that they both have pretty terrible sprint to fire speeds. This will make any gun feel really clunky, and with the shotguns in this game, you're supposed to be pretty aggressive and kind of close the gap, but unfortunately the sprint to fire speeds are pretty slow, so you end up just feeling like this gun is very clunky and like it's a slog of a gun to get up, and you just want to hip fire and you just want to walk around corners, because why would you want to be caught dead sprinting with them? I totally understand that, and it's one of the things that I think needs a buff on these shotguns is the handling. There's no need for this to have such slow aim down sights time and sprint to fire speeds, or at least they need to have some attachments that really do help them, and they just don't at the moment. With the Marine SP in particular, you can't get below 150 milliseconds for a sprint to fire speed, which is way worse than the Lockwood 680 from Modern Warfare 3, and a lot of other shotguns just in COD history are never really that slow. So now that we got that out of the way, I want to dive into some controller settings that I have turned off to make my gameplay feel a lot smoother whenever I use something like the Marine SP. So hopefully these will help you guys out, and of course check out the timestamps if you want to hop to a certain part of one of these controller settings. Okay, so here we are in private match, and the first setting I want to show you guys is under the controller settings, and under movement it is sprint restore. I have it on just for this demo, right? So what does it exactly do? Well, basically sprint restore has it to where whenever you interrupt your sprint with any sort of action like mounting or shooting, as soon as it's done, it goes right back to sprinting without me having to click in my thumbstick to sprint again, right? So that can be pretty useful in some situations, especially if you want to just go, and you're always like full speed ahead. But what happens with a shotgun, in particular like a semi-auto gun or something like a pump action, is you'll be shooting, or rather you'll be sprinting, and then someone runs into you and you shoot, and then you kind of walk around, but because of sprint restore, you end up going into sprint again, so now you have to take into account your sprint to fire speed again, and if you have tac sprint on, then it's going to be even worse, because tac sprint to fire is way worse than just regular sprint to fire speed. So here's what happens with sprint restore is you run, you shoot, and you're like trying to strafe, and you end up sprinting again, and you have to account for that sprint to fire speed. It feels really awkward and really clunky. I do not like it, and this is one of the first things I noticed was a big problem. So you want this setting off. You want to take this and turn it off so it feels much more like standard COD. So when you're running, you run into someone, you shoot, you sprint to the left or right, or rather you strafe to the left or right, and that's it. You just kind of walk around, which is what you want, because you don't want to be caught in a sprint again in the middle of a gunfight and have that sprint to fire speed kill you. So again, turn it off so you can just run, shoot, and that's it. There's no sprinting, right? And omni movement doesn't help it either, because you can't go left, right, or backwards to kind of get out of the sprint. You just keep sprinting. So it kind of has a double effect and makes it really bad for you if you're trying to run around with a shotgun and just hit fire. Now, the next option I want to look at is under the movement category again, called slide maintain sprint. And this one I have turned on for demo purposes again. Now, this one really isn't as much of a problem, but I've noticed it's again doing some things that are a little inconsistent, and sometimes it doesn't always work how I want it to. So I always have it off, and I've noticed it's better that way. Now, what slide maintain sprint does is if you're sprinting and then you slide and you complete the slide, well, you don't go into prone, but if you complete the slide, you just go right back into sprinting immediately after. Now, that's all fine and dandy, because a lot of people don't typically just like slide the whole way. Usually you have people that, like me, just slide cancel, right? Like that. But I've noticed it can be inconsistent to where even after a slide cancel, even if I don't push in the thumbstick to actually sprint again, I notice that sometimes it just continues to sprint. And it's normally whenever I go side to side. It's not really consistent, and I don't know why. But see, like right there, I didn't actually click in my thumbstick. It seems to be whenever you slide cancel a little too drastically that sometimes it will happen like that, right? So it's a bit inconsistent, But again, it just sort of adds to it where you want to be in control of what you're doing, and you don't want the game doing these things automatically for you, because if you're in a gunfight and you slide cancel real quick and you're trying to shoot like just there, that was a perfect example. I was trying to get my shot off, but because of the sprint, I had to deal with the sprint to fire speed. It probably throws off your aim, so it's not very good to have on. In my opinion, just turn this off. So the next option I'll look at is basically sprint assist, and this is sort of a bonus. I know a lot of people probably don't use this. I know a lot of people do, but I think most people that play with the shotgun tend to have it off just because it can get very much so in the way. Now, what it essentially does is it's basically auto attack sprint from other games, right? So no, oh God, it's the bot. Anyway, so what this essentially means is any direction you move your thumbstick, you don't have to actually engage in the sprint. It does it automatically for you. I'm being stalked. And so it can be really nice for fluidity and movement, right? Because you kind of go all over the place. It helps get your momentum up really quick if you want to slide cancel away from a corner or what have you. It's really, really nice in that regard. But for shotguns, and specifically like semi-auto guns and semi-auto shotguns, it gets a little awkward because you have this sort of stuttering effect where if you don't kind of commit to shooting and holding down the trigger completely, which I know sounds really weird, you end up with this weird stutter, right? If you don't pull it all the way down and you're moving forward or left to right, in this game with Omni movement, you basically end up sprinting and interrupting your shots, which can get really frustrating. It's not as much of a problem for a pump action because usually you're cycling through your shot anyway, and it's just not really much of an issue. But for the other semi-auto shotgun, it can be very, very awkward. I'll probably have a separate video entirely for how to use shotguns with auto attack sprint in this game, because it's a little bit different in this one since you have Omni movement compared to other CODs. So I'll probably make a separate video for that one, but just let you guys know, it can be a little troublesome if you're using attack sprint, auto attack sprint, I mean, or rather in this game, sprint assist. Those controller settings are probably the ones I would turn off. All of those, if you want to commit to using a shotgun, those are the ones I've noticed that definitely give me the most issue. In particular, the sprint restore option, that one definitely turn off. I don't feel like it's that useful, and a big part of gameplay for me is making sure I'm actually inputting everything myself. I don't like when the game does things for me in terms of completing actions. It just kind of gets a little annoying. It throws off my groove. I want to be intentional. That's why I have things like auto mantling turned off as well, which it can save you in a pinch, but just sometimes it just throws you off, and I'd rather be in 100% in control of my actions, and if I fumble, it's my fault and not necessarily the game's fault. And that is pretty much going to do it for this video, guys. I know it's probably a little bit longer, but I did want to help you guys out because I know a lot of people have been complaining about these shotguns being clunky. Unfortunately, like I said in the beginning of this, the sprint to fire speed is just not going to do the guns enough justice, and it's probably going to feel clunky a little bit to some degree no matter what, until they give them a buff or make some attachments a little bit more usable for sprint to fire speed reduction. But of course, as always, I want to know down below in the comments, what do you guys think about these tips? Have they actually helped you? Are they not really doing much for you and it still feels really, really clunky? If you could see a buff for one of these shotguns, what would it be? With all that being said, guys, I will see you in the next video.